what today is? It's kind of an important anniversary in the history of the world, history of the 20th century.
I don't know. I'm not even sure what day of the week it is. I'm so busy. It's Monday, right?
It's big. Yeah, it is. I think it's Monday.
Monday.
Yeah, Monday. Monday.
Okay.
It's the
I'm not far.
it's big anniversary over in Russia. It's the 70th anniversary of the death of Premier Joseph Stalin. He died on this day in 1953 at the height of the Cold War.
Well, there you go. That's there's a little piece of trivia for you.
Here's another interesting piece of trivia, and this will blow your mind. To this day, the people of Russia love Joseph Stalin. He has consistently in the polls, Levada is the big polling agency. It's like their Gallup over there. He polls between 70 and 75% approval ratings still to this day in Russia. They say that Joseph Stalin was the greatest leader they ever had. And they don't want the Soviet Union back. Only about 50%, 55% would like to have a return to communism as their form of government. But they love Stalin. They love Stalin.
The year is 1952. The communist revolution in Russia is 35 years old. Its living god is Joseph Stalin. His face is everywhere. For a quarter of a century, he has ruled the lives of the Russian people. His whim has meant life or death for them. He is called by Nikita Khrushchev our hope, our expectation, the beacon that guides all progressive mankind. He is 72 years old. His health seems excellent. His power is absolute. Before him pass thousands of his soldiers. The atmosphere in Moscow is grim, hostile. He has expelled the American ambassador. He says war with the imperialists is inevitable. Beside him, on top of the mausoleum of Lenin, stand his heirs. Malyankov, he seems closest to Stalin. Beria, chief of the secret police. Molotov, Stalin's old comrade in arms. Stalin trusts none of them. It is the morning of October 5th, 1952. Moscow is being scrubbed, washed down. A great event is about to take place. The first Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 13 years. The elite of the communist world are in Moscow. Stalin has already laid down the new party line. Stricter control in internal matters. A tougher foreign policy. The delegates come to the great hall of the Kremlin to hear the details. No non-communist is permitted inside the Kremlin walls. The events which follow are masked by secrecy. This man was an eyewitness. His name is Auguste Lecour. In 1952, he was the number 2 man in the French Communist Party. He led the French delegation to the Congress.
When a foreign communist leader goes to Moscow to attend a Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, I believe one can detect in him the same feeling a Muslim must have when he goes to Mecca, or a Catholic when he makes a pilgrimage to the Vatican to receive the Pope's blessing. The 19th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union opened on October 5th at about 7 p.m. And naturally, like all the other delegates, my eyes were fixed on the platform. It wasn't long before the leaders appeared and there was respectful applause. Contrary to what we expected, Stalin was not the first, but next to last. When Stalin appeared, the applause doubled. It became true delirium. I have often witnessed similar scenes, but never anything like that. Then the meeting began. It is difficult to talk about all the speeches because there were 10 sessions with more than 130 speakers. Therefore, I will keep to the essentials. Molotov made the opening speech. It was not an important speech. What was significant was that after Stalin, Molotov received the greatest ovation. After this, the serious business began with the speech of Georgy Malenkov, secretary of the Central Committee of the party. This report lasted 5 hours by the clock. Every word was permeated with Stalin's thoughts. Like all the speeches that followed, it showed that this Congress was a true Stalin festival. I must mention the speech made by Nikita Khrushchev. Like all the other speakers, Khrushchev elaborated on his admiration for Stalin. He said it was thanks to Stalin's leadership that they were so successful. Finally, the one we were all waiting for arose. Stalin stood on the platform, and once again, shouts and applause greeted him. One can say, in summing up the works of this Congress, that it showed Stalin's indisputable authority, his absolute power. Later, on an occasion at the Bolshoi Theater, one thing was clear. Never had a Congress appeared so united. The political heirs of Stalin are not concerned with the fact that the situation from which they profit today was carefully prepared by Stalin. They don't blame Stalin for the omelet he left them, but hypocritically they now attack him for breaking the eggs. This, of course, permits them to eat Stalin's omelet with the best appetite in the world. I have never heard such enthusiasm as they showed then. But with all that followed, I must say I am no longer certain that they were all sincere.
Long live the great Soviet Union, the indestructible bulwark of peace, democracy, and socialism. Long live the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, the party of Lenin, Stalin. Long years of good health to our dear teacher and leader, the great Stalin.
Pravda, March 4th, 1953. The sickness of Comrade Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin. The medical bulletin in Pravda is signed by 10 doctors. Stalin has suffered a brain hemorrhage. His right arm and leg are paralyzed. He cannot speak. Direction of the government has been taken over by Stalin's closest comrades in arms, Malenkov, Molotov, Beria. A long line forms outside Lenin's tomb. The people are told to display unity, solidarity, and vigilance. The chief rabbi of Moscow calls for a day of fasting. Prayers are said at the Central Synagogue. At the Yelakovsky Cathedral, the patriarch calls on God to spare Stalin's life.
The bulletins that day of March 5th, it indicated very clearly that Stalin was sinking rapidly. From time to time that evening, I left the office to circulate around the city to try and pick up some clue as to what was going on. It was typical March weather for Moscow. Cold, raw, blustery. I made a complete circuit of the Kremlin. Lights were blazing in the Kremlin. I hoped I might get some clue as to what was happening inside. An hour or so later, I made another circuit of the city. By this time, there was hardly any traffic on the streets. People had gone to bed. They went to bed early in Moscow in those days. There were fewer lights on the Kremlin by that time. No cars going in and out. The thought came to me that perhaps the Soviet leadership, the Presidium, were meeting that evening. And the meeting was over and the members had now gone home.
On March 5th, I was listening to the evening broadcast of the Soviet press agency TASS over Radio Moscow. It was a regular news broadcast beamed to the regional press at dictation speed. Shortly after 11 o'clock Paris time, the broadcast was interrupted in an unusual manner. The speaker said in an excited voice, "Stand by! We are interrupting our broadcast for 20 minutes. Stand by, stand by." And so I did. And the long waiting began. Every 20 minutes, the announcer repeated, "Stand by," without giving additional news. I waited each time tensely for the dramatic news we were expecting, almost 48 hours. Finally, at around 2 a.m. in the morning, the announcer spoke quietly and slowly. "Внимание, внимание, говорит Москва." Pay attention, Moscow speaking. Слушайте нашу передачу для республиканских и районных газет. Listen to our broadcast for provincial press. Информация номер 18. Information number 18. Точка, full stop. Brackets, TASS, full stop, paragraph. And then began the reading of the lengthy communique. Дорогие товарищи и друзья, dear comrades and friends, Центральный комитет Коммунистической партии Советского Союза, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and so on. It took some 6 or 7 minutes to come to the point. Скончался Иосиф Виссарионович Stalin. Iosif Vissarionovich Stalin is dead.
It is 6 a.m., the morning of March 6, 1953. Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin has been dead for 8 hours and 10 minutes. The news has been public for 2 hours. Pravda, the immortal name of Stalin, will live forever in the hearts of the people of the Soviet Union and of all progressive mankind. Attention, Moscow speaking. Comrade citizens, a plea from the Central Committee of the party and the Council of Ministers. Our task is to guard against any kind of disorder and panic. Why are the leaders afraid of panic? Why did they wait 6 hours to announce Stalin's death? What is happening behind the Kremlin walls? Who now holds the power Stalin held? No one on the outside yet knows.
I walked over into Red Square to see what was happening there. The sun was shining brightly. It was warmer than it had been the night before. And out there in the middle of the square, I saw something that I'd never seen in all my life in Moscow. A crowd of people standing right out in the middle of the square. 150, perhaps 200 people. I couldn't figure out what they were waiting for. They were standing silently, looking toward the Kremlin, saying nothing to each other, their faces impassive. I still don't know what they expected, but they expected something.
While Moscow waits, the news is sent out around the world. East Germany, Stalin is dead. The UN, Soviet delegate Andrei Vyshinsky.
The heart that is no longer beating is that of the great leader of the Soviet people, of our great teacher, and the great herald and banner bearer of peace throughout the world, Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin.
Stalin is dead, and he cannot bequeath to anyone his prestige. A new era begins, an era in which the guiding spirit is liberty, not enslavement, and when human relations will be those of fraternity, not one-man domination.
Well, I just say it was good riddance. Now all I hope is that we don't have another one to worry about that could be worse.
All across the communist world, the mourning for Stalin begins. This is Budapest, the Hungarian parliament. The chief mourner is Imre Nagy. 3 years from now, the Russians will kill him. This is East Berlin. On this March day, the East Berliners are mourning Stalin. 3 months from now, they will be killing communists in the streets. It will take Soviet tanks to subdue them. Their revolt will be the pretext for the liquidation of one of the new Soviet rulers.
Durch die Allee, die Stalins Namen trägt, zog der Trauermarsch der Werktätigen Berlins. Hunderttausende kamen, legten Blumen nieder, und in ihrem Blick stand neben der Trauer das Gelöbnis, dass sie sich noch fester mit der Lehre wappnen werden, die ihnen Stalin als Vermächtnis hinterlassen hat.
It is mid-afternoon now in Moscow. Stalin lies in the Hall of Columns. Lines have been forming in the street outside for hours. In the next 100 hours, 5 million people will stream past the body of Stalin. 3 lines go back miles through the squares of Moscow. The lines move slowly. The people have to wait in the bitter cold for hours.
There were some strange things that happened during those waits. It was cold, wintertime. Some of the young people would set a bonfire going, keep themselves warm while they waited. Somebody would have a bayon, a Russian accordion. He'd start playing it. First thing you knew, there'd be a bunch of youngsters dancing. Strange atmosphere for a funeral. Over in a corner, you'd see a couple of old fellows with a bottle of vodka taking a snort or two. Right next to them, there would be an old woman all in black with tears streaming down her face.
Inside, a symphony orchestra plays funeral music around the clock. The crystal chandeliers are wreathed with crepe. Flowers are banked to the ceiling. Hour after hour, the mourners file silently by. They see Stalin on his bier. He wears the special uniform of a generalissimo. His heirs form an honor guard at his side. Each now shares part of the power he held. Malyankov, his strength is in the party and the bureaucracy. Molotov, supported by the old guard Bolsheviks. Beria, he controls the secret police. They stand frozen, silent, beside Stalin's corpse. They watch each other. Who will make the first move? For 100 hours, Stalin remains on view. The mourners get one last look, then the line pushes on.
One quick glance at the body, and then you were past. And as you came out, all of a sudden you found yourself outside, in sort of a field kitchen set up to feed the troops, and the smell of borscht filling the atmosphere, and you were outdoors. And that was Stalin's morning.
March 9th, 10:20 a.m., the funeral of Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin. Massed cannons fire a final salute. 30 guns, 10 salvos to the minute. For the next 3 minutes, nothing moves in the Soviet Empire, from Vladivostok to East Berlin. In Red Square, the ceremony begins. The new leaders go to the mausoleum of Lenin to speak their funeral orations. Malyankov says Stalin's name will live forever. His listeners have no way of knowing the new rulers have already begun to plot to destroy Stalin's name, to destroy each other. Stalin's remains are placed in the mausoleum of Lenin by his heirs. As they file solemnly out, each knows the struggle for Stalin's power has begun. The power is divided now. They know it won't remain divided. One of them will finally have it all. Night comes to Moscow. No one knows what is going to happen next. only that nothing will ever be quite the same again.
As I walked down toward the Hall of Columns, I saw a bunch of workmen. They were tidying things up after the funeral. They were taking down the great portrait of Stalin, a two-story portrait of Stalin that had been on the outside of the Hall of Columns. And as they lowered it down, it fell on one end with a crash. One of the workmen said to the others, "Осторожней, be careful." One of his companions said, "Oh, that's all right. We won't be needing this one again."
Well, since it's the anniversary of his death, I'll be respectful and we won't go into the negative aspects of his.
That's okay.
reign.
You want to share your thoughts? Good, bad, indifferent to Stalin?
I'm not a fan
curious.
of authoritarianism or death, so
Right.
we just won't go down that road today. But it is 9:00, so I'll throw it over to you for some final thoughts. But first, I'll say thank you to Jamie for the $5 super chat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamie. And yeah, I'll throw it back to you to just kind of sum things up, Larry, because tonight was, pretty much your show. Thank you very much for all the
Oh, thanks for
the
having
work
me.
that you've done. Yeah, that's it for me. And
Me
and
too.
thank you, everybody for joining us tonight. I hope that you found that valuable. I certainly did. I think that was great work, Lori. And
Thank you.
sort of digging that up from the past and bringing it forward into the present, right? So we can see where things are going in the future. Because we have not just tomorrow's news today, we have next year's news now.
And we have news from the past.
That's
We have-
right. That's right. And we'll be back tomorrow night, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on the Maverick News Channel, where we have the antivirus programs for your mind.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.